Hello, this is Dale Nesbury, President of Muskegon Community College. Welcome to the 2021 Unity Breakfast. First of all, the logistics of a virtual event required us to record and share videos, so many thanks to those participating in this process. Special thanks go to our presenters, along with our talented staff responsible for making the technology work and work well. Many thanks go to our sponsors, including Howmet Aerospace, the Muskegon Area Intermediate School District, the Community Foundation for Muskegon County, the City of Muskegon, Baker College of Muskegon, and of course the students, faculty, staff, and Board of Trustees of Muskegon Community College. So thanks for tuning in, and on with the program.
Hello, my name is Ed Garner, Regional Director for the Michigan Small Business Development Center. And at this time, we would like to present our Martin Luther King Jr. Legacy Award in appreciation to an individual who has diligently served our community with their time, their talents, and their commitment to justice, equity, and equality. And for me, it's also joy and with some sadness that I present this award today. Joy because it gives me a chance to acknowledge the lifelong contributions this person has made to our community, but sadness because unfortunately, he is not here to receive it. The man I'm talking about today is none other than the late Bishop Nathaniel Wyoming Wells Jr., who at age 78 suddenly passed away earlier this year, being one of the earliest victims of the coronavirus in Muskegon County. Known by many, Bishop Wells was a stalwart community leader who presided over Holy Trinity Institutional Church of God in Christ for almost 44 years, taking over after his father. His vision of ministering not to just the spiritual side of human beings, but to the natural or physical side and to the emotional strengthening of people, led him to create his Total Man Ministry that was adopted nationally by COGIC. Bishop Wells was a leading community advocate also for the poor, and throughout his ministerial career, he was instrumental in establishing programs in education, housing, transportation, and child care. In 1991, he founded the Trinity Nonprofit Housing Corporation, which built and operated affordable housing developments in Muskegon County, as well as Kalamazoo, Benton Harbor, Saginaw, Chicago, Illinois, among other places. He was also the founder of Tri-Valley Academy Charter School in 1995. Throughout his life, he received numerous community awards, including the Most Influential Person of the Year in Muskegon in 2003, Muskegon County Economic Development Award in 2000, Muskegon Bar Association's Liberty Bell Award in 2000, the statewide Janine Peterson Award in Affordable Housing in 1999, and in 1975, he was named an NAACP Man of the Year. Bishop Wells was also a bishop amongst bishops and was a significant leader in the National Pentecostal denomination, for which he was a general board member for 19 years. He was also a prelate of the Michigan Western Jurisdiction, and he earned a doctoral degree in theology from Midwest Theological University in 2014. But most importantly, Bishop Wells was a family man. His family was his world. And now his elder son takes over to continue his legacy with the church. And then, of course, he also loved Muskegon County. And his church ministry was also his world too. Watch now as we play a short video featuring the life and times of Bishop Nathaniel Wells Jr.
Bishop Nathaniel Wells Jr. was the senior pastor of the Holy Trinity Institutional Church of God in Christ in Muskegon, Michigan. He and his wife, Mary Ann, had 6 children. Bishop Wells served as the jurisdictional prelate of the Western Michigan jurisdiction of the Churches of God in Christ. He also served as a general board member, overseeing the day-to-day administration of one of the largest Pentecostal denominations in the world. He has also served on the National Judiciary Board of the Court of the Churches of God in Christ, which is a 9-member appellate Supreme Court of the Churches of God in Christ. He has also served as chairman of the Credentials Committee of the General Assembly. Bishop Wells served on the board of directors at the TCT television network. His program, Total Man Ministry Broadcast, has been broadcast weekly for many years on the TCT network, being seen around the world. Bishop Wells received many civic and community service awards throughout his distinguished career. In 1991, he founded the Trinity Nonprofit Housing Corporation, which develops affordable housing for families. Nathaniel Wells Jr. traveled around the country with his crusade team and orchestra proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. TCT honors the life of Bishop Nathaniel Wells Jr.
Now accepting the Martin Luther King Legacy Award today will be Bishop Wells' wife, Sister Mary Ann Wells, and his son, Elder Nathaniel Wells III. Will you join me?
We want to thank every person that has been a part of this award on today on behalf of my mother and my 4 sisters. We appreciate everything that has been presented on today. And we thank you, Muskegon County, for allowing our father, my mother's husband, to serve you with integrity and with honor. Thank you so much for this award.
Greetings. My name is Frank Dawson, and I'm honored to join you on this reflective day. I've been asked to share a few personal thoughts regarding actions and events in our history that may provide inspiration on our continuing journey to build unity, guided by Dr. King's legacy and vision. Growing up in a public housing project in New York City in the 1950s and 60s, my sisters and I were deeply aware of the inequalities that burdened people of color in housing, employment, and education. But we had very little belief in our power to change that condition. When radio and television began to cover the passionate demonstrations for equal rights led by Dr. King, Ralph David Abernathy, and other young leaders in the South, we were inspired to act collectively in our own neighborhoods to address the needs of our own community. This was to be a much heavier lift than was initially imagined. Public school systems were overcrowded and underfunded. Employment opportunities that could provide a living wage were limited to those with a college degree, which had not been an option for single-parent mothers who had to work full-time at minimum wage to feed and sustain their families. But even as the criminal justice system turned its back on the heroin epidemic that was wreaking havoc on inner-city neighborhoods, there remained the belief that change was going to come, largely due to the visibility, bravery, leadership, and forthright inspiration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Little did we know that that was about to change. Similar to the December 7, 1941, Franklin Delano Roosevelt proclamation of a date that will live in infamy, April 4th, 1968, will forever be remembered as the day Dr. King's physical presence was taken from us. We prayed, we cried, we dug deep for strength and resolve, and thankfully, the movement would not die. Young leaders had already attracted attention, like Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee leader Stokely Carmichael, who adopted the phrase "Black Power," which became a clarion call, especially to a growing number of Black students who had gained entrance to predominantly white colleges. Demands were made on campuses from San Francisco to New York for the development of Black and ethnic studies programs, along with other measures that would further validate the numerous unacknowledged contributions ignored in higher education regarding people of color. The hiring of faculty of color also came to be a non-negotiable demand. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense also gained notoriety and influence nationally after being launched at Merritt College in Oakland, California. While the ultimate goal was influenced by Dr. King's vision, the tactics would shift to include the protection of Black lives and meeting violence with violence by any means necessary. Back in the neighborhoods, gang leaders with slick processed hair slowly gave way to brothers with afros and dashikis. Sisters ditched their perms and embraced gaily head wraps and African print dresses. They grew pride in addressing each other as brother and sister, a far cry from the terms that had previously taunted, scorned, and dealt disrespect toward one another. Perhaps most importantly, there was growing pride and celebration of our heritage and homeland, Mother Africa. Kwanzaa would join Christmas as our own cultural celebration. So what is the road ahead? Looking forward, we have certainly learned that systemic racism runs deep, and the equality and justice we seek for all will not be easily attained. But we also know that Black Lives Matter, and perhaps it's simply a dream deferred, as Dr. King lovingly declared in his final speech in Memphis. I've been to the mountaintop, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. Eternal thanks and blessings to you, Dr. King. Your dream is our destiny. I would like to thank the Muskegon Unity Breakfast Committee for this opportunity to share my reflections at the 2021 celebrated of the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Blessings to you all.
Hello to my beautiful Muskegon family. This is Theo E.J. Wilson, and I certainly miss y'all during this time of year. Well, what a year it's been, right? The events in Black life have propelled our narrative and our story and our struggle onto not only the forefront of the American mainstream, but on the world stage. It cannot be ignored any longer. And what we have right now is a golden opportunity to pick up the torch of Dr. King and move on forward to the future. We can't waste this moment right now. What's most important is that we address the kind of racism that we're facing at its deepest level, and that is the systemic level, right? Interpersonal bigotry is a terrible thing, but when people create systems, when people are in power and positions of authority and use their personal bigotry to operate the machinery of society, that's when it causes the most damage. And to all of those who are wanting to be allies to us, everybody who wants to stand in the gap and make a difference, first thing we're asking you to do is listen. Listen to not only what we're saying now, but to listen to what we've been saying this whole time. Because truthfully, Black Lives Matter has been the subtext for every freedom movement since emancipation. It was literally Black Lives Matter enough to be freed from chains, right? Black Panthers was saying Black Lives Matter enough to be defended by any means necessary. And Dr. King was saying Black Lives Matter enough to be treated with civility according to the laws and the Constitution of the foundation of the ideals of this great nation. Racism is inhumane, and the American ideal is very humanistic, right? So they don't mix, and we're the ones to blow the whistle. And what we're asking you today is that let's be the ancestors that our future generations are thankful for. We got to make some new mistakes because these old ones are getting old. We have to be the generation that finally gets it right. And any ally, anybody resistant to what I'm saying right now, don't take this as a battle cry. This is an invitation back into humanity, into the brotherhood and sisterhood of humankind. And if you take that invitation, I promise you, you will be on the right side of history, because whether you like it or not, we're making it right now. My name is Theo E.J. Wilson. Pick up that torch that Dr. King laid down with his life and live for something bigger than you. Holla back.
We find ourselves at an important and precarious crossroad in American history, a tale of two realities. One reality fully embodies and in many ways surpasses the dream of Dr. King. America elected her first Black president. The other reality shines a much dimmer light and in many ways parallels the deep-rooted challenges that face King in his darkest hours. Instead of Emmett Till, we mourn the deaths of Trayvon Martin, Amir Rice, and so many other Black lives cut down unnecessarily. Yes, we wholeheartedly celebrate Barack, his personable stride and smile, coupled with the dynamism of Michelle at his side, shall always be a source of pride for many Black and white Americans, not to mention the adorable Sasha and Malia. Yet at a time where we reached what King would have counted as our highest moment, arose a need for a movement that in its own inimitable way spoke to the paradox of the time: Black Lives Matter. It is rather unfathomable to believe that in the year 2020 such a need would exist, that a race of people who have contributed to the solvency and betterment of a nation would have to ask to simply matter. Across America, there is a renewed energy and effort to champion diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to weed out, address, and eliminate real and implicit bias. While for 74 million Americans, racism was not a deal breaker, for another 81 million, representing all walks of life, it was indeed. We voted in our first woman and woman of color as Vice President of the United States, and President-elect Joe Biden has appointed a historic number of minorities to cabinet positions. A stark contrast from the previous administration. And while the current day's revelations have revealed that for many, race relations have not moved 1 inch from those held in the past, the true measurement of how far we've come can be seen in the 100-year-old Black great-great-grandmother who cast her vote for president for the first time in her life, by the innumerable Black students who attend formerly segregated schools and colleges, by Black residents who proudly reside in the neighborhoods of their choice, and yes, by the fact that we are slowly but committedly reimagining policing in neighborhoods throughout America. King's words set the tone for the urgency we must adopt when he eloquently stated, "We must use time creatively, in the knowledge that the time is always ripe to do right. Now is the time," he said, "to make real the promise of democracy and transform our pending national elegy into a creative psalm of brotherhood." He went on to say, "Now is the time to lift our national policy from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of human dignity." Yes, my beloved Dr. King, with those words forever etched in our hearts, we march on, brothers and sisters willingly bound together by a collective idea. If one is bound, all are bound. If one is mistreated, all stand to be mistreated. I am not free until all are free. We march on, Dr. King, until freedom rings for all. Thank you.
Good morning, Muskegon Community College. I'm Reverend Alvin Herring, National Director of Faith in Action. It's a real honor for me to join you this morning on your annual Martin Luther King Unity Breakfast. I had the privilege a couple of years ago to address this breakfast in person, and while I was there in your community and on your campus for that day, I met and made many friends. And to all my friends, I hope that 2021 will be a good year for you, and I thank you for your ongoing commitment to lifting up the virtues and the values of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Well, on this day, every year, we take the time to honor Dr. King. We take the time to remember his message, his ministry, his prophetic words of wisdom and guidance. And we take the time to renew our commitment to one another, our commitment to justice, our commitment to equality, our commitment ultimately to love. And I think it's really important that we do this. And the challenge has been, however, that we only do it on this day and fail to live out the values and the virtues of Dr. King on the other 364 days of the year. Well, we have every year a new opportunity to break that pattern and to actually use this day to commit ourselves to the ongoing and difficult work of not only creating within ourselves a revolution of love and justice, but creating that revolution in everywhere, every space, in every community, every city, all around us. You know, on this day we make a lot of lofty pronouncements, and we talk about all the ways in which Dr. King was better than us. And then we leave the day maybe feeling a little bit better, but no more assured that real change would happen than the day before. You know, so we have an opportunity this year to contemplate doing something really different. So I want you to join me in a moment. I want you to join me in this moment right here. I want you to remember 2020 and all the challenges and all the vicissitudes and all of the heartbreak, and maybe even all the trauma that it visited on us. We've got to continue to heal. We've got to continue to face what 2020 said about us and about our country and about the world. We've got to have our moments where we break down in tears. We've got to have our moments where we rage with our heads tilted toward the sky. We've got to have our moments where we even withdraw from one another and think thoroughly through all that we've experienced and decide what of 2020 we want to carry forward with us and what of 2020 we want to leave behind. But as we do that work, we need to do that work. As we do that work, then we must turn to this present moment and ask ourselves, how will 2020 and how will the great guidance and the great example of Dr. King make us better people in this moment and prepare us for the future to come? I think one of the keys would be for us to recall in Dr. King's 1967 speech about two Americas, the great challenge he put before us. He called in that speech for a revolution in this country. And I know for some, there might be fear attached to that word. For others, they might be feeling, well, it's about time. But Dr. King was talking about a very specific revolution. He called it a revolution of values, where we would confront our moral failings. Not only me confronting you and you confronting me, but where we would confront that in ourselves. And then we would ask ourselves the tough questions about who we really knew ourselves to be, what we really wanted to do in the world, our aspirations, our dreams, our imagination for a better world and for a more just world. And then he said we would be required to act on that, because revolution is not just a noun, it is also a verb. He said that it's not just us thinking through a better way of being, but actually doing the work and taking the actions that will make us better and make everything around us better. So let's make it plain. This year we have an opportunity. And some might say, well, we had the opportunity last year and the year before and the year before that. But we've come through 2020 and I think we've learned something. When Dr. King was talking about a revolution of values, the value that he ultimately wanted us to get real good at and to really hone and perfect are the values that are attendant to love. He gave perhaps one of the most powerful public discourses on love during his time in his prophetic ministry. And he helped us break down all the various forms of love. And then he talked about one love in particular being just sentimental, making us feel good, but really not accomplishing anything. And he warned us that that love is the kind of love that we often bring to the challenges of racial justice and the challenges of fighting systemic racism and white supremacy. But he was suggesting that we have a bolder love, a more powerful love, a love that I believe is predicated in justice. These days, I've been saying to anyone who would listen that the future belongs to those who can love. But not just love, as Dr. King was saying sentimentally, but love that is attached to action. The future belongs to those of us who can love our neighbor who comes to us as an immigrant, but recognize their real human value and extend to them support and grace. The love that says that our dear brothers and sisters locked away in this country's many jails and prisons don't belong there, but belong home with us. A love that says that we have to confront systemic racism in the legal and justice system, because at its present day, in its present iteration, it provides very little justice for those of us who have often been on the wrong side of the law. A love that demands that everyone who wants to live in a home and everyone who wants to work can find both a house and a job and a way to get between the two. A love that demands that we quit ignoring the real needs of children and make sure they go to bed full, with full bellies, and wake up in the morning and go to decent schools, and that in those schools their passion for learning and their vigorous energy and imagination is unleashed. A world that demands, and a love that demands, that we extend our deep recognition of all of God's children as human beings to those who might be gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgendered. A love that says, though we might worship differently and call the divine by many different names, ultimately, we're bound to use that love to unite us and not to divide us. So on this day, let us make an uncommon declaration, maybe one we've never made before. On this day, let us say, after surviving 2020, that we are now prepared. We're practiced in a way. We have been strengthened and we have been poured into in a way because we've come through that difficult year. We are now prepared and maybe better able than ever before to take on systemic racism and to make a bold and powerful move to develop this country and our communities as more just, more equitable, and more fair. You know, in 2020, we lost Ahmaud Arbery, we lost George Floyd, we lost Breonna Taylor. They weren't just victims of senseless violence. They were victims of a violence that has its home in racial hatred. In 2021, we have a decision to make. Will we confront that racial hatred? If we harbor it in our hearts, will we confess it? Will we let go of it and embrace one another as true brothers and sisters? Will we bring this new love into this moment and use it to propel us towards each other and not away from each other? Well, my hope and my prayer for you on this Martin Luther King celebration at this Unity Breakfast, my hope and my prayer is that you make a decision, that you do it now. You don't do it lightly, but you make it real. And then every day you pay down something on that decision. Every day you find a way to stand true to your commitment, to fight for racial justice, to fight for real equality, to take on racism, systemic racism, white supremacy in all of its forms, to rinse your heart of all the hate, and to build it up with all the love that you can muster. Because if I'm right, and I think I am, the future belongs only to those who can love. I want to see you in the future. I plan to be there. God bless you on this Martin Luther King Day. Take care, Muskegon Community College. I hope to visit with you in person sometime real soon. Peace.
I'm very honored to share with you some of the ideas I have to build a better future and to fulfill Dr. King's legacy. Number one, active listening and empathy. Many times there are oppressed groups and individuals that share their experiences and stories with us, and it falls on deaf ears. For us to build a better community with better unity, it is important for us to provide safe places and safe spaces where individuals can share their stories and we can actively listen so we can build a better future. Number two would be speaking up. This can be very hard for anyone because oftentimes when it's time to speak up, it's within our own families and with our closest friends. Speaking up can help to change the community, change perspective, and change the way that others are viewed. It's important to speak up because sometimes people may not know that they're being offensive or that they're hurting someone. So I challenge everyone to be active listeners, show empathy, and speak up. In closing, I want to leave with one of Dr. King's quotes. I do not believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. I also do not believe that the great vault of opportunity in this nation has insufficient funds. So let's all do our best to build a better future and fulfill Dr. King's legacy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mickey Wallace, and I was asked to speak today on behalf of what I believe the vision of Dr. Martin Luther King means to our future. I'll begin as such. When a 10-year-old, 5th grade star student was asked what the vision of Dr. King means to the future, the answer from this bright-eyed and hope-filled youth was a passionate recital of the No Child Left Behind textbook taught, maliciously edited and repackaged excerpt of the 1963 I Have a Dream speech. You see, the youth stated that Dr. King would want a person to be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And while I thought that was beautiful, admirable, commendable, and certainly moral and civil, I couldn't help but think, to the ill-learned, this display from a 10-year-old might register as progress in what was once thought to be an insurmountable goal of civil rights. But 58 years since Dr. King delivered that address on the steps of a deceased slave owner, and the call of morality and civility continues to cry out under the oppression of racist policies and ideas. You see, that fifth grader, standing on the shoulders of giants, has little to no awareness of the shroud of socioeconomic inequity currently rocking our consciousness into pacification. That youth radiates the hope and optimism that any parent would want their offspring to have. Because to hope for a future is to have power in your present. But what a crude act it is to base that hope on an equitable opportunity of achievement. As Dr. King put it, the changes of integration did not cost our great nation anything. It benefited from the integration of buses, schools, parks. But it's much easier to integrate a park than it is to guarantee equitable housing, education, and employment. So I'll leave you with this. The future of the vision of Dr. King belongs to those who will consistently confront injustice everywhere. It belongs to those who will pray and then rise to the occasion to meet those obstacles they were praying for the strength to overcome. It belongs to those who will advocate for the abandoned and who understand and actively oppose an inherent system built on inequity and injustice. The future belongs to those who know that the thinking that got us here cannot be the same thinking that gets us out of this rut of inhumanity. This future belongs to those who believe in, work for, and implement policies that shape the behaviors that produce the society in which a person is no longer judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. So when we talk dream, vision, and future, I sincerely believe that it belongs to the woke. Thank you.
On behalf of Muskegon Community College, Baker College, and the MLK Unity Breakfast Committee, thank you for watching our 2021 MLK Unity Celebration video. We are indeed fortunate to have so many outstanding former speakers share their thoughts, research, and experience with us as we put into context the impact that the work of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has had and continues to have on our lives. A special thanks to our long-standing partners, Howmet Aerospace, MAISD, the Community Foundation of Muskegon, Muskegon County, and the City of Muskegon. We are currently planning our next in-person breakfast for 2022 to be held tentatively at the new Van Dyke Mortgage Conference Center. Watch for more information about the event and how you can get involved. It will be exciting. Please support any MLK breakfast activities in the community, virtually or in person, that may be held on Monday. If you plan to attend in person, please wear a mask and socially distance. Once again, thank you for watching.